Who is it? It's the clown. Who is it? It's the clown. Open up. Who is it? It's the clown, man. Open up. The clown's not here, man. Ha ha. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth, and yes, I am in the house. The clown is here. Hey, if you can tell by that opening, we are here to review legendary comedians Cheech and Chong, and what a privilege this is going to be. One we grew up on, amazing career, a rebirth, generations involved with these guys. Episode 105. This is April 20th, 2021. And as always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce for the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time. There's only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. Go green, get it shipped right to your door. Football season's coming, man. No better way than to have some buffalo wings. And what better way to make them than with G Vegas buffalo sauce? All right, I'm sure Cheech and Chong, other than a good buffalo sauce, they've enjoyed some stuff over the years. Let's get into it here. Cheech Martin and Tommy Chong, made famous in the 1970s and 80s on their hippie culture, on the drug movement that was going on the time, especially the love for cannabis. And if you were a hippie, I guess you bought one of those little Volkswagen hippie vans and you traveled across the country smoking weed, and you hit every party there was to party. It became a culture, it became a lifestyle, and these guys, they embodied that movement that was going on during that time. Hey, what's the 70s without a Volkswagen van and a hippie movement, right? Let's see, they met in the 60s in Vancouver, British Columbia. Chong was a Canadian citizen. I didn't know that. I'm a Canadian. I got Canadian blood running through me. My mom, born in Canada, so who knew that me and Chong got something together. Let's see, Cheech actually moved to Canada to avoid the draft. Moved there from California during the Vietnam War because he didn't want to get drafted. So who knew he was a draft dodger? Hey, it was a common thing. If you're a hippie, you dodge the draft. I guess that's what you did at the time. You moved to Canada. That's where they met, and I guess it became a good thing that happened because we would have been robbed of lifetimes, hours and hours of great material from these two guys had they never met. So maybe it was meant to be. Let's see. They started out performing stand-up as a duo. They started having successful in low-budget films, which I'm in the middle of making a low-budget film right now. The World Needs a New Superhero, so check that one out when it comes out later on. Well, during the pandemic, I don't know when it's coming out, but when it does, you be sure to check out this film because I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. And that goes to show you, you don't need the big-budget film to make it, man. You can make a low-budget film become a cult classic and hit it just as big, and we'll get into a little bit later just how big it did hit just a low-budget film. But their comedy record albums, which today it's all online. Kids listen to music. Before that, it was CDs. Before that, it was cassette tapes. Well, before cassette tapes, you had the infamous records, and before that, there were 8-tracks, which actually was like a big cassette tape. But records still popular today because the artists can sign them and they make really look real good on your wall. Not that you'd listen to them, but they make a great display piece. But they had some classic records, and it's a lost art for them. Now it's all stand-up comedy specials, and you do a comedy special and you hit the road. The album is a lost art because, as we've discussed before, you can't make any money on it, but they had some of the greatest albums when there was something left to the industry about making a comedy album. Some of the best-known routines: Erect My Eye, Basketball Jones. I remember when I heard Basketball Jones, I was singing that. It's one of those songs when you hear it, you're singing it in your head for a week. I got a Basketball Jones, oh baby, ooh. I mean, you'd walk around work like humming that in your head. It was such a catchy tune. Santa Claus and His Old Lady, Sister Mary Elephant, which I think we've all had a teacher like that. We can all relate to that routine. I think that's why it was so relatable. All their material was just so relatable. And probably their most famous one, I opened up with a rendition of it here on the show, Dave's Not Here. That was the one that really hit them out of the park. Everybody was talking about that routine. It was one of those, you had to play it for your friends. You had to tell them. They had to listen to it. You'd chase down your friend. Hey, listen to this, man. Hit the old play button on the cassette tape, and you'd be shooting quotes from that back and forth for the rest of the day because it was that funny. Let's see. Their first full-length movie was Up in Smoke in 1978, became a cult classic. And as I said, we discuss, why do you make low-budget films? You hope they become cult classics and they lead to bigger things. That's what happened for these guys. Not much money went into making this film, but it was such a goofy cult classic. It actually grossed $44 million at the box office. Okay, now usually, if you want to gross $44 million, you got to spend $30 million to make like a big budget Star Wars money and hope you make $14 million. Okay, now these guys probably spent less than $1 million. I'm sure they spent less than $1 million. Okay, and then grossed $44 million. That's everybody's dream right there, is to make that much money off of a low budget film. But despite being low budget, it was one of the biggest hits of the time. Led to 2 sequels, Cheech and Chong's Next Movie in 1980, and Nice Dreams in 1981. After that, nobody stays on top forever. They kind of, not that they were erased, but they were a little, less successful than the peak of their career. They released in 1982, Things Are Tough All Over. 1983, Still Smoking. 1984, they broke from their stoner brother routine. They tried a more serious thing, because they pretty much had played the stoner routine out. By the 80s, it wasn't a big movement anymore. I mean, the movement had pretty much taken over at that point. So, you got to change up your style every now and then. They did Cheech and Chong, the Coruscant Brothers, which was a more serious role, which, led to more serious things they did later on in their career. You can only do the stoner thing for so long, then, yeah, we've seen it, we need something new. They gave you something new. Which is tough, because that's what you're remembered for, is being the Stoner Brothers. But, we've seen it so many times, we want something new, but then when you watch something new, you're like, hey, man, where's the Stoner Brothers? That's what we grew up watching, that's what we want. So you can't have it both ways. It's tough to recreate your original success. Let's see. That led until a big old break, and they did some solo stuff for a while, all the way from 84 to 2014, when they did Cheech and Chong's animated movie. They made a little bit of a comeback there. Did appear in smaller roles along the way. Graham Chapman's Yellow Beard and Martin Scorsese's After Hours, which I can only imagine being a comedian putting out a low-budget film and all of a sudden the phone rings. Who's on the other end? It's Martin Scorsese. Yeah, you sure it's Martin Scorsese, but hey, Martin Scorsese gave him the call, and that's when you get chills go down your arm that you're on the line with such talent like that. And yeah, geez, can you imagine just being in a film directed by Martin Scorsese? That's just the stuff every local comic dreams about right there. That's what the things legends are made of right there. 1985, they did an album, Get Out of My Room, which featured Born in East L.A., parody of Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA, obviously, which at the time Weird Al had started a big movement with parody songs. The parody songs were almost becoming bigger than the actual songs. That's how much people wanted to laugh back then. And everybody was tapping onto it. And I remember Cheech, he did Born in East L.A., which led to a 1980 Simpson film of the same title, starring Cheech, Born in East L.A. I remember I did watch that movie way back when. I couldn't even tell you half of what it was about. I do remember everybody come out of the sewers at the end or something just to get into L.A. or something like that. But it was another one of those cult classic movies that they were famous for, that one of those you had to see it at the time. Let's see. They separated from their drug role, going solo, as I mentioned. In June 25th, 2019, the New York Times listed the duo of artists as artists whose material was destroyed in a 2008 Universal fire. So apparently they had some stuff they were working on, and it got destroyed in this big fire at Universal. I do remember that big lot fire or whatever it was back then, and it's not like today where you can back everything up on a computer, okay? Back then it was kind of more like, I remember I'm a big Sam Kinison fan, and, little known, he was in the movie The Three Amigos, but his scenes were deleted because they didn't want him stealing the movie like he stole Back to School. He was in one scene of Back to School, stole the whole movie, and, I think the Chevy Chase and the Steve Martins, they didn't want him stealing the movie with his one scene, so they deleted the footage. Well, back then, when you delete the footage, it was on a VHS tape, and you just recorded over it, or you threw it in the trash. It's not like today where everything was backed up, and some higher-ups have gone looking for that Sam Kinison footage, and it can't be found because, like I said, nothing was backed up. It probably got thrown away or recorded over. So, once you lose material like that, you can't just get it back because it ain't backed up. So they lost some stuff they were working on, and making a movie, as I said, I realize how much work is involved, and if you put in that much work and lose it, that's tough to come back from right there, man. I mean, time is money, and so much time goes into a movie, you can never get that back. Let's see, after parting ways in the 80s, the duo didn't work together for years, until 1992, when they worked on the animated The Last Rainforest. This led to a little rumbling about maybe them getting back together. 1997, Chong appeared on Cheech's TV series Nash Bridges. He was doing that with Don Johnson from Miami Vice. Him and Cheech. They had their little TV series that was pretty popular at the time. That was a good duo. They worked together. Let's see, they both did voiceover work for South Park, and I can't say how much voiceover work. It's a thing that I'm getting interested in, coming out with a puppet series myself with some voice work. I do, as I said, the world needs a superhero. The new superhero, the movie's coming out. It's about the child support superhero, a character that I do. And I'm thinking about doing a puppet series, the Child Support Superboy, talking about how children can get very confused by their parents going at it in court. And at that age, it's a tough thing to, it's tough enough for adults to comprehend, never mind kids. But voiceover work, man. These guys are doing South Park. 2003, they announced that they both were willing to reunite. I mean, it had been enough time where, hey, remember Cheech and Chong? Wonder whatever happened to them. Well, let's put out a new thing and we'll find out. Now, they were planning on the big reunitement when Chong's glass company, Chong's Glass, was raided by the FBI, and I guess it was part of the drug paraphernalia crackdown of the time, where today you can go to your local convenience store and buy drug paraphernalia. Well, back then, they knew if you had drug paraphernalia, it led to the drugs, and they were doing a big crackdown on selling the stuff. So, hey, where there's drug paraphernalia, there's usually drugs. So, and I remember Chong talking about it, like, he was so, and they were actually trying to help him get out of it when they raided his house. He's like, what's this paraphernalia for? You use that for tobacco, right? No, man, I use it for weed. I stuff weed in there. No, I use it for tobacco, right? No, man, weed. I stuff weed. Like, he didn't even know enough they were trying to help him out. Like, he's sitting there pretty much telling them, yeah, I smoke weed. It's no big deal. Well, it was illegal back then, so it was a big deal. So I guess hats off to him. He manned up. He cut a deal where his kids and wife would stay out of prison, which they weren't involved. They should have never brought up charges anyway. But that's how the dirty law enforcement gets you. They'll bring charges against your wife and kids. They don't want them, but hey, we'll let them off the hook if you plead guilty to what we want you to. It's like they had nothing to do with it to begin with, but that's the crooked stuff they got to pull to get you. But he did plead guilty. Kept his kids and his wife out of jail. Did 9 months in a federal prison, which, I mean, now your local prison's bad enough, but if you're in a federal prison, that's like the worst of the worst people on the planet. They go to federal prison, okay? This ain't your local drug deal. These are big-time hardened criminals in there, so hats off. You survive 9 months in a federal prison, man, you're hardcore. Hey, go Tommy Chong, man, that's hardcore stuff right there. Did have to pay a lot of money in fines and stuff, which, you're making $44 million at the box office, you probably got it, but at the same time, it's tough to part with a lot of money when you have it. That's how people go broke right there. Divorce and FBI drug raids. That's how you go broke when you're famous. Let's see, in 2004, after he was released, the duo started work on a film, Grumpy Old Stoners. By 2005, it was announced that the project had been canceled. I don't know why they canceled it. It was just, guess it wasn't working out, the little reunitement, but I guess it worked out better than, movies are tough, man. It's a lot easier to go do your local show. Movies, there's so many people involved, so many things involved to do. But they did make good. They went in 2008, they reunited for a Light Up America tour, where they toured America doing some live stand-up comedy. Again, another tour that I should have seen that didn't. There's been a few, man, I'll tell you what. Don Rickles and Joan Rivers came through, and I was going to go see them, and I said, I'm busy, I'll catch them next time. Not thinking at their age, there was no next time. They both passed away. I also regret not seeing that. Steve Martin came through, and I wanted to see how many legends are left. Steve Martin's one of the few legends, the original legends. You can't see Dangerfield, he's passed away. Pryor, Carlin, they're passed away. Bill Cosby, he's in prison. The comedy legends, Steve Martin, he's one of the last one you can actually see. And I was busy at the time with my own comedy stuff. I didn't have the time to go see it, and I regret to this day not going to see it. And again, Cheech and Chong touring, another one I wish I had gone to see. And if you could only be everywhere, boy, I would absolutely do it. And now I'm getting to the point in my life where I could be everywhere, and we got this damn pandemic, and I can't go anywhere. So what are you gonna do, right? Let's see. They recorded a DVD release of the Light Up America tour. So I think it was in San Francisco or something. They recorded it and did release that on DVD. So while I didn't see the show, I can always go back and watch the DVD and pretend like I was there. But there's nothing like a live show. I do live stand-up comedy myself, and it don't matter what you put on tape. It don't matter what you put on DVD. Nothing, compares to doing a live show, because that's where you're interacting with the audience, and you can capture some of it on film, but you can't capture the entire experience. I don't care what you do on film. You can't capture everything you're doing. Let's see. As we've said, what about every comic from this day and age I have done a review on. They were both guests on The Simpsons. Hats off to The Simpsons. I mean, longest running cartoon of all time. So apparently, they can get all the big guests on there, and they've had every big game comedian you could think of. They've had guests on that show. So that's a great one to add to your resume. Let's see. 2012, both appeared in Juggalos in Cave Rock, Illinois. I guess that's a big comedy festival. 2014, they were both on Tom Green Live, and they announced on there they were working on a new movie with director, I'm probably going to butcher this name, Jay Chandrekar? Anyway, they had a director. Maybe he's famous, maybe he's not, I don't know, but good to hear they were working on a new film. 2007, they were part of a marijuana documentary, which, like I said, back then it was such a hippie movement, and they made such a thing about marijuana where, nowadays it's being used for medical purposes where, back then, the government is drilling your head, is going to ruin your life, man. If you do this drug, you're going to be a drug addict, where it's more of a recreational drug, they call it now, than a hardcore drug, which, I mean, I don't know, Colorado passed a law that it's legal, and I guess people were getting so stoned, they were doing such stupid stuff, they ended up dead. So if you abuse a recreational drug, I guess it can be just as harmful as a regular drug. So everybody's got their thing, Me, I use food. I overeat. I'm a big guy. I use drugs. My food is my drug of choice, and sugar is the most addictive drug on the planet. Everybody thinks it's a food. Sugar's a drug is what it is. Because the more you eat, the more you want. Makes you feel good. But for the time, back then, the drug movement was a big thing, where today it's more of an acceptable thing. I remember Marlboro, the cigarette company, they were patenting names for like packages of weed before it was even legal, because you could see it was coming. You could see the movement was coming, the drug movement where they were going to legalize marijuana, and all these cigarette companies, they were prepared for it way before they made it legal. Same thing. We went through it with booze in this country. Booze at one time, you had to go out in the woods to this makeshift bar that they had. These old farmers were brewing up some home brew, but eventually it got so big movement they had to legalize it. Same thing with gambling. It was, what was it, Vegas and Atlantic City. You want to gamble, those are the only two spots. Well, nowadays you can go to your local Indian reservation, and that's how the demand became so big. That's how they got it back. Let's say 2008, which this was a big one. This website was getting as big as YouTube, and it's so sad that it went away. 2008, they released a Funny or Die video where they reunited to put a Get Out and Vote video out there, and it became very popular. And I remember Funny or Die, man, they were putting out some big stuff, and now the website's a shell of what it was. I don't know what brought down the website. Probably money, it costs a lot of money to host stuff like that, but it was getting big, and I wish that was still around, because it was a fun website. Because it was originals. They were putting out they were first ones to put out originals, and I guess, which led to the Netflixes, and the Amazon Primes of today, I guess, where everybody's they got a website to put out an original. But Funny or Die, they were the original one to come out with that idea that, hey, if you want to see it, the only place you can see it is on our website. And then all of a sudden, boom, every website's doing it. They got their own television, so you don't even have to tune in TV to see a television series anymore, Look at Disney with The Mandalorian. That's like the third or fourth most watched TV on the show on the planet, Only place you can see it's online. You can't tune in TV and see it. Remember Star Trek did that? It pissed me off. It was before I wanted to stream stuff online. They started out, Discovery. They played half the episode on TV, then said, oh, if you want to watch the second half, you got to watch it online. I'm like, you motherfuckers, what are you doing? But eventually they forced, now everybody's watching stuff, they're streaming thing online. And they turned it in where you used to have to go home to watch TV. Now you can be anywhere, pull out your cell phone, and hey, you're watching whatever you want. It's convenience, okay? That's what we go for nowadays, the convenience of everything. Let's see, 2008, big honor for any comedian. Cheech and Chong got roasted on TBS, and one of the funnier roasts. I do remember watching it. I mean, it was such old footage. It was kind of hacked. It wasn't good high definition, whatever, today, but it was hosted by Brad Garrett. It was filmed at Caesar's Palace during the comedy festival out there, and there's nothing better to me in comedy than a good roast. We did some local roasts here with me and some of my friends. They roasted me, we roasted them, and still some of my highest hits of, I did an old television series called The Comedy Kitchen, and still some of the highest rated episodes were those roasts, because everybody likes a good roast. Who don't like people just shitting on each other? That's always a fun thing to watch. But I mean, just to be asked to be roasted, because, you know, you can do the local roast, but I mean, for the big time stuff like that, only the legends get roasted. It's the legends of the legends, and certainly Cheech and Chong are comedy legends. We all grew up on those albums, and I still got one here in my studio, Cheech and Chong's Greatest Hit. I got the record right up there on my wall, right next to some of the old classics. Eddie Murphy, Delirious, Andrew Dice Clay, Sam Kinison. Because, you know, those are the legends right there. This guy right behind me. There's the guys who started new stuff, paved the way in comedy. Let's see, 2010, he appeared on Lopez Tonight, which at the time, man, Lopez Tonight was the show. It was kind of like, he was bringing out guests that wouldn't even do talk shows. Kobe Bryant, he never wanted to do the talk show circuit, but he went on the Lopez show, and he said, you know, you don't do talk shows. Why? He said, because it was you, man. It was such a breaking show at the time. Then Conan O'Brien came over, took his time slot, and they booted old George Lopez out. But he was doing something groundbreaking at the time, and to get guests like Cheech and Chong on there in 2010, it can show you, you know, to make people like that who hadn't been together come out of retirement, come out of what they were doing to be on your show, you were doing something special. They were both guesting on WWE Raw, which, I mean, the big wrestling event. You know, if you're so big in comedy that they're inviting you to a wrestling event, that means everybody wants a piece of you. That's how big they hit it. 2009, you know, they started entering the world that everybody's entering in. You don't put out movies anymore. You put out DVDs. They put out a DVD, said, hey, watch this DVD. It got released. Catchy name. Hey, watch this DVD. So if Cheech and Chong's telling you to watch the DVD, I guess you got to watch it. 2011, they did a prank on YouTube where they had a viral video. They were talking about, it was a film trailer for a movie, but it was a non-existent movie. It was just a trailer for a film, but the film was never going to be made. And I remember Weird Al Yankovic did that one about his life. He released a movie trailer about a movie coming up about his life, but they never did the actual movie about his life. It was just a joke. Well, they did a joke for a non-existent movie. It was Cheech and Chong's Magic Brownie Adventure, which that was a big thing. If you smoke pot, you could make pot brownies. You could cook them up and eat them in the brownies. Pot brownies were the big thing at the time. Well, come to find out, the whole thing was just a gimmick, you know, to get you interested in the movie, and it was revealed that it was a commercial for Fiber One 100 calorie brownies. So they actually, I guess, hired Cheech and Chong, and it worked, man, because they got everybody thinking it was going to be a movie, and it was just a commercial for a brownie. So they got more exposure than if they had released an actual commercial for a brownie and used Cheech and Chong. So genius gimmick, and that's what happens. You got to come up with something new to get people interested, something, you know, something that hasn't been done, and it worked for Weird Al, and it worked for Cheech and Chong. 2012, now these guys are getting older in their career. Chong announced on CNN that he was battling prostate cancer, which nobody knew at the time. Prostate cancer, man, that's a mean one right there. They don't know how it was going to affect his work, if he was going to go on or not. How long are you going to live, I guess? You know, am I going to survive at that point? You start questioning. You start thinking about the afterlife, and that'll bring you down. Hey, speaking of the afterlife, I got to give a shout out. I mentioned they did the old, before the podcast, there had the TV show called The Comedy Kitchen, and one of the original team members. She directed some episodes, helped out in the booth. Karen Bartram, she ended up passing away. Shout out to her. The show was big, and I wouldn't be doing the podcast if it wasn't the show that kicked it off for me. So may she soar with the angels in heaven, because she was one of the good ones, and you always got to pay tribute to the people who helped you along, and she certainly helped me along in my career. And another shout out to my sweetheart, Amy Reed. She lost her pet dog just today, and if anybody has a pet dog, they're not a pet, they're a member of the family, and certainly shout out goes to her too, because it's never easy losing a member of the family. So, I start asking myself, what am I putting out for you guys? Because you guys are my family out there here in Media Land. So hopefully, I put out the movie for you guys. The world needs a new superhero, and hopefully you guys enjoy it, because I'm giving it everything I got, and that's the one either breaks me into the big time, or I'm local comic Dennis Wirth for the rest of my life. But hey, we still got Funny Like a Clown podcast. I'm having fun. You guys are tuning in. I hope you're having fun too. How big are podcasts becoming in 2014? Cheech and Chong were a guest on the Doug Benson podcast. So why are there so many podcasts? Why? Because that's what people are listening to. That's why everybody's got not another podcast. Yeah, because that's what people are tuning in. They want to hear the raw version. They don't want the edited, shined up version for TV. They want the raw, one-on-one, me and you. We're shooting the shit about comedy here. That's what you guys want. You just want to hear the raw version of what's going on in comedy here. So, you start pulling out guests. Oh, who don't? Bill Burr got his podcast. Whitney Cummings got her podcast. Artie Lang, when he's sober, has his own podcast. Joe Rogan, biggest podcast going in the world, man. All comedians. I mean, it's what you do. 2018, Cheech and Chong were on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And I guess they said it perfectly, they were talking about their career and what they did and how it went along. And, Cheech went out and said, nowadays you can now go down to your local mall and buy weed. Back in our day, you had to go behind the mall to buy weed. So the times changed where, the cutting edge stuff they were talking about at the time, well, this many years later, it's not really, cutting edge. Back then, if you talked about smoking weed, whoa, you're not supposed to talk about that's cutting edge, Nowadays, you can go down grocery shopping for some weed, so it's an acceptable part of today's thing, so it's not as, it's not getting the fanfare it would, because it's not as cutting edge it used to be. But why is it legal? Why can you buy it in your grocery store? Because guys like Cheech and Chong, they paved the way with the movement, and certainly it was stuff with their movement that led to it being legalized, and more people talking about it, more people getting together about it. And I say that about the Black Lives Movement. Whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it, everybody's talking about it, and that's a movement. So they had the weed movement. You had the Black Lives Movement, and if you see my movie, The World Needs a New Superhero, which, I'm dropping hints, there's going to be some names in it. But, hey, I'm trying to start a movement for a child's right to both parents equally. I think it's time. The government's made enough money off of raping fathers into an oblivion where they're sleeping under a bridge, because they get every penny out of them, and using our children as an excuse to do it, to get rich. And, when you're destroying families to put money in your pocket, there's something wrong with that system. So, I'm starting the movement. My question is, how many more children and parents have to go decades without speaking because of parental alienation? How many more parents have to commit suicide? How many more children have to commit suicide before we realize as a people this system isn't working? So I'm starting the how many more movement. So you had the weed movement, you had the Black Lives movement, and I'm starting the how many more movement right here on Funny Like a Clown podcast. And I guess some things, when they broke off in their solo career, now, if you're an old fart like me, you remember their original stuff and what they did. And, of course, you can go back, and many of the kids today have went back and listened to their albums and cracked up. And, they probably never get how big it was then. But, for the time, what they'd be remembered for, Cheech, he was in the movie Tin Cup with Kevin Costner. A great, great movie, and great casting to put him as the sidekick to Kevin Costner. Great movie about golf. As we mentioned, he was in Nash Bridges with Don Johnson. Kids of today remember him from that. Disney came a-calling. Okay, you're at the top. You only get the best of the best. I've said it before when Disney comes calling. In the movie The Lion King, Cars, and just some Beverly Hills Chihuahua. Just a lot of Disney movies. That's when you're at the top of the game. And, doing Tin Cup, that really broke out a new clean audience for Cheech, where he was known as the dirty weed smoker before that. So now he's hitting two audiences instead of one. Tommy Chong, as I said, known for his drug paraphernalia, the little glass things they smoke the weed out of. Well, that's what he's known for, having a company for that. Did Far Out Man, which I mean was one of the bigger movies back in the day. It was a solo movie that he did, and probably what he best remembered for these days, just an amazing role that he did on That 70s Show. One of the bigger shows of our time, That 70s Show, and he just played, if you're going back to the 70s and that stoner time, what better guy to bring on than Tommy Chong? And man, he just played a great role, which, he'd be remembered for today, in addition to the great work. The kids of today remember him for That 70s Show, and the parents remember him for Dave's Not Here, man, back when it all came out. So, hey, what a great time. Pay tribute. Cheech and Chong, one of the greatest duos of all time. Go on YouTube, look up their work. Still going at it. Everybody needs a laugh, and certainly they opened up a whole new era, a whole new thing. They were originals. They did the thing. Cheech and Chong. Whoa, there's the sneeze, because if I didn't sneeze in this studio, it wouldn't be Funny Like Clown Studio. This is Funny Like a Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, we're reviewing comedians. We're having on comedians. We're doing it all. You want comedy, this is where you come, because know the history. If you want to be a good comedian, if you want to know about good comedy, you want to do good comedy, see good comedy, know comedy's past. And that's what we're doing here. We're teaching you comedy's past. We're teaching the history of comedy, and one good thing leads to another. Go out, be a comedian yourself, just tell a joke at work. You don't have to be a professional comedian. You can be the class clown, you can be the jokester at work, you can be the water cooler guy. Go to work tomorrow, tell somebody a joke, put some laughter in the life, because laughter is the best medicine. We'll see you next week. Good night.